The gospel message has taken upon itself a whole new meaning, a universal gospel, and they take away our identity in the process. And it teaches us about history based on modern day demographics. I already made a video about the Syrians, about the Egyptians, and today I'm going to take a look at Ethiopia. They want you to believe that we as Europeans became Christian far in the future, but the true Ethiopians, they are the Hebrews, they were the first ones who became Christians, and they are actually the biblical Israelites. Is this really true? Let's take a look at it.
From Ethiopia, 17-year-old Nebiat Tafari. It was Nebiat's suggestion that we start this discussion with a prayer in case there should be violence later. What you heard was Nebiat from Ethiopia giving a prayer in the Ge'ez language. He's a Cop by religion, Amhara by race, Hebrew in origin, and an African since he's been to America. How should we start this discussion on prejudice? Would it be unfair to ask each of you what your own prejudices are? How about you, Nebi?
Actually, I am prejudiced against the Italians, and I have been prejudiced against the Mohammedans. Since I arrived here, I have developed some new prejudices, and I never felt that I was a Negro till I came to this country.
So this is a discussion from the 50s between prejudice among African people, because not all Africans are the same. And you see that this Ethiopian young man grew up in a society where they have to have prejudice against sub-Saharan Africans, because they have been told their whole lives that the Ethiopian race, these are the true Jews, the true Hebrews, therefore they have to look down on the other black African races. But is he truly Hebrew? Because by his own admission, when he came to America, he was seen as just another African. Let's take a look at another clip.
Prejudices, you admitted to several at the beginning.
Well, as I told you before, we have also our own prejudices against the African Negroes. We consider them as inferiors. We have, of course, our own reasons for saying so.
Well, what are they, Mister?
Well, first thing, we consider ourselves to be of the lost tribe of Israel and not Negroes. It's only that our faces are burned that we look like Negroes. And also...
And now we see this movement in America called the Black Hebrew Israelites, because they say, see, the Ethiopians are the true Hebrews and they were black. But most of these black people in America are not even from Ethiopia. They are from the West Coast, like countries like Nigeria. So they are already disqualified of being Hebrews. But is this young man a true Hebrew? Is he a true Ethiopian? He says, well, we are sunburned. But these people are not so dark because of a sunburn. I'm going to explain that a little bit later. To truly know the history of the modern day Ethiopian people, we have to look at far history. But it is kind of complicated, because in Ethiopia are many different shades living there. You have really dark Ethiopians and very light brown Ethiopians. There are even Ethiopians found with blue eyes. So to put the pieces of the puzzle together, let's look at scripture. So Jeremiah says, can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard his spots? Now this is a bit confusing, because that word Ethiopia is a Greek word that came later. What is the original text actually saying? So Jeremiah did not say Ethiopian, he said Cush. He was talking about the people of Cush. Who was Cush? Well, Cush was a son of Ham, just like Put and Canaan. Canaan was the father of the Canaanites, and Cush and Mizraim went south to North Africa. Mizraim founded Egypt, and Cush became the father of the Cushites. But just like Mizraim became mixed with the darker races of the south, also Cush started to intermix, because when Cush went into Africa, there were already black races there. Guys, Ham was not a black man. Ham was the son of Noah. And of course, like I always say, Noah did not have a sub-Saharan African son, a Chinese son, and a white son. All these sons came from him. They were all the same. And none of them was black. But the fact that Egypt was ruled by white descendants of Ham and white descendants of Cush, that is always ignored. The idea that all the Egyptians and all the Cushites or the Ethiopians were only black is just a misnomer. No, there were definitely also white people living in Egypt and in Ethiopia. Let me quote something to you from Pomponius Mela. He was a 1st century Roman geographer. And he looked at these regions and he said, "On those shores washed by the Libyan Sea, however, are found the Libyan Egyptians, the white Ethiopians, and a populous and numerous nation, the gay Tuli. Then a region uninhabitable in its entire length, covers a broad and vacant expanse. At that point we hear of the Garamantes, the first people to the east. After them the Argilei and the Trogodite, and furthest to the west the Atlantis. In the interior, if one wants to believe it, at this point the scarcely human and rather brutish goat pants, Blemius, Camphasantes, and the Satyrs possess rather than inhabit the land. They roam freely everywhere with no houses and no fixed abodes." So when Jeremiah said, "Can a Cushite change his skin or a leopard change his spots?" Why did Jeremiah use a leopard as an example? Because a leopard has no fully one color skin. It is spotted. So it could be that Jeremiah was also referring to the Cushites who were of different peoples and became mixed. In a time where the Adamic world was ruled by the Greeks, there was a king of Ethiopia, the husband of Queen Cassiopeia, and the father of Princess Andromeda. He was a king of Ethiopia, and this is how they depicted him. And he became a myth because they named a constellation in the northern sky after him. And when you look at the left bottom corner, you see swastikas. I'm gonna come back to that later. Now let me quote something from Diodorus Siculus. He was a Greek historian from the 1st century before Christ. But there are also a great many other tribes of the Ethiopians, some of them dwelling in the land lying on both banks of the Nile and on the islands in the river, others inhabiting the neighboring country of Arabia, between the Nile and the Red Sea, and others residing in the interior of Libya and the rest of Africa, Sudan here. These things do not fit the modern-day Afrocentrism that they are pushing in our schools. Therefore they try to discredit the ancient Greek historians. But let me quote something else from Diodorus Siculus. "The majority of them, and especially those who dwell along the river, are black in color and have flat noses and woolly hair. As for their spirit, they are entirely savage and display the nature of a wild beast, and are as far removed as possible from human kindness to one another, and cultivating none of the practices of civilized life. They present a striking contrast when considered in the light of our own customs." Now let me get over some more quotes. Herodotus said, "The Ethiopians are the most handsome of all men." Why would a Greek call some sub-Saharan African who are described as savage and everything, why would he call them handsome? No, these were also Adamic people, guys. Diodorus Siculus, "The Ethiopians are said to be the tallest and most handsome of all men." Homer said, "The Ethiopians were the first men who ever lived, and Ethiopians were the first to worship the gods and other sacrifices." the people of Adam, guys. The Ethiopians are always fair-skinned and have curly hair, Aristotle. Curly hair does not mean an afro. King Alexander also had curly, wavy hair and fair skin. Black skin is not fair skin. The Ethiopians have a long ancestry and their wisdom is beyond that of any other nations. This was obviously not speaking about sub-Saharan Africans, guys. The Ethiopians are very intelligent people and excel in their understanding of astronomy and philosophy. Strabo. You're talking about the sons of Adam, guys. Here, Plutarch said, the Ethiopians are the most religious of all nations and have the greatest reverence for the gods. The Ethiopians are a race of high culture and learning who excel in all the arts and sciences. Pliny the Elder. The Ethiopians have a unique sense of justice and are known for their fairness and impartiality. Lucian. The Ethiopians are very healthy people and enjoy a long life. Hippocrates. The Ethiopians are skilled in agriculture and have many crops. Xenophon said that. The Ethiopians are a very musical people and have a great love for dance. Pindar. Let me go on a little bit further. The Ethiopians are noble people and have a great sense of humor. The Ethiopians have a reputation for being brave and fearless in battle. Guys, if you read the book of Jasher, you can see that the Greek kings had relationship with the Ethiopian kings. They were even called families. Now, of course, the Greeks were not black. Black Hebrew Israelites like to say, well, it's talking about black people, therefore the Greeks must have been black. Guys, this is nonsense. These were all Caucasian sons of Noah. The Ethiopians are highly cultured people and have a great love for poetry and literature. Are you talking about Bushmen who live in huts? Did they call them highly cultured people? The Ethiopians have a strong sense of community and are known for their hospitality. The Ethiopians are a deeply spiritual people and have a great love for the divine. The Ethiopians are people of great industry and are skilled in many crafts. The Ethiopians are a people of great refinement and are known for their taste and elegance. The Ethiopians have a great love for freedom and are fiercely independent. The Ethiopians are a deeply religious people and have a great love of the sacred, according to Plato. The Ethiopians are a very civilized people and have a great love of learning, according to Lucian. And when the Greeks were describing those people who lived in the region of Ethiopia, they called them the most noble of all, highly cultured. They had a love for poetry and literature. They excelled in arts and philosophy. They had great industry and they were very civilized, handsome, tall and fair. Were these Greeks actually describing these people, or could it be, like all history and scripture tells us, that the Adamic white people lived in these regions? So they claim that the modern-day brown Ethiopians, they were the first Christians and they established the first church. But if that is true, how come that they never fulfilled the promises made to Abraham? Because from Abraham would come a nation and a multitude of nations. And where are the first churches according to scripture? Because when I read scripture, there were already gatherings, ecclesia, in the first century. Where were they? Well, the first Christians were those who believed Christ in Judea. Then the gospel went into the Adamic nations. Now you had in the 1st century the Church of Corinth, the Church in Rome, the Church in Galatia, the Church of Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Thessalonians. All these churches were north in Asia Minor, Greece, Rome, and Paul even wanted to go to Spain. And not just the gatherings, actually the first account of a church building was in England, in Glastonbury, in Somerset. This was built by Joseph of Arimathea, Jesus, his uncle. Because Jesus' uncle was part of the tin trades in Cornwall, England. And of course, in the 1st century, many Judeans, true Israelites, went into Europe and sailed all the way to England. This church started out as a little building with wood and such, and later they placed this ancient building on top of the foundations. But we find also very early Christianity in North Africa, Alexandria, Egypt, because of course also there still lived Israelites, white Adamic Israelites. So among the oldest churches in Ethiopia are sky churches. They are carved out of rocks way up high in the sky. Abuna Yamata Gu is a monolithic church located in the Hazen Wareda of the Tigray region, Ethiopia. It is situated at a height of 8,460 feet and has to be climbed on foot to reach. It is notable for its spectacular location, its architecture and dome dating back to the 6th century, and its 15th century wall paintings. So let's take a look at these 15th century wall paintings. So here we have a white Jesus and white people, and also some brown mixed people in this picture. So we see in these wall paintings white people and brown people. They painted down some history there from that region. Now that individual on the left, you can see something happened to its face. The face is missing, but you can see also by his hands that both these figures are white people. But the oldest church in Ethiopia is the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. It's an Ethiopian Orthodox church. That means that it is based on Roman Catholic Orthodoxism. The church is located in the town Axum during the 4th century AD and has been rebuilt several times since then. Women are not permitted in the old church. The Blessed Virgin Mary, representing the archetype of the Ark, is the only place women are allowed within the premises. So, even though it has been rebuilt a few times, this church started in the 4th century after Christ. And what do you know? On this location they have paintings as well. Guys, the 4th century, that means it was still part of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, all these areas were Adamic areas. And there were Caucasian people living in all these regions. That's why I always say King Alexander and the Romans, they were only concerned with the Adamic world. After a time, the Romans even made a decree that all citizens within the Roman Empire must be Christian, Roman Catholic Christian. And this is the start of universalism. That's why the darker people in Ethiopia converted into the Roman Catholic Church. And then of course we have this Christian building in Ethiopia, built in the 12th century, they say. But if you look closely, what do you see? Yes, you see again this symbol. Remember the symbols we saw with the ancient Greeks? We see the same symbol in this building. And the Ethiopians nowadays, they even admit that they did not build this. According to them, it was built by angels. but the swastika has been a white symbol for thousands of years, until we could no longer use it since the Second World War. But this was a Caucasian symbol, and it is found everywhere where the Caucasian people went. And they just took over that culture. People converted, right? Just like in India, Buddhism, and in the Far East, they accepted these symbols as their own. So these Ethiopians, they adopted Christianity, but now they started to identify as a true Hebrews. But as you can see in this video, they are not the Hebrews, and they are not the first Christians.